Hello. Welcome back to the Speaking Reset. My name is Ryan, and I am really glad you are here today. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. I want to ask you a question, a tricky question, a question that many English teachers have never been able to fully answer. Here it is. If you can understand a word when you hear it, why can't you use that same word when you speak? Think about that for a moment. You hear a word, you understand it immediately, no problem. But the moment you try to say it yourself, the word disappears. Your mind goes quiet. You feel frozen. You feel stuck. The word that was so clear just a second ago is suddenly gone. This has happened to you. I know it has. It has happened to almost every English learner in the world. So here is your tricky question for today. What is the difference between understanding English and speaking English? And why does that difference feel so enormous, so painful, and so impossible to close? I want you to watch this entire video. I want you to listen carefully. And at the end, when you have found the answer, I want you to write it in the comments below. Not just, I understand. Tell me what the real gap is. Tell me what you discovered today. Because by the end of this lesson, I promise you, something will shift. This is not a vocabulary lesson. This is not a grammar lesson. This is a lesson about what is really stopping you from speaking and how to finally, truly begin to fix it. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Gap. Let's start here. Let's start with the gap. The gap. That is what I want to talk about first. Most English learners know this gap very well. They feel it every day. Maybe you feel it right now. The gap is the distance between what you understand and what you can say. It is the space between listening and speaking. It is the silence that comes when someone asks you a question in English and you know the answer, but the words will not come out. The gap feels personal. It feels like a failure. When you are sitting in a meeting or a classroom or a coffee shop and someone says something in English and you understand everything, every word, every sentence, you understand the joke, you understand the meaning, you understand the emotion behind the words, and then someone turns to you and says, "What do you think?" And suddenly, you feel like you have never studied English in your entire life. That feeling, that silence, that panic, that is the gap. And most people blame themselves for this. They say, "I am not smart enough." They say, "I have not studied enough." They say, "Maybe English is just too difficult for me." They say, "Other people seem to speak so easily, so why can't I?" But here is what I want you to understand right now, at the very beginning of this lesson. The gap is not because you are not smart. The gap is not because you have not studied. The gap is not because English is too hard. The gap exists because understanding and speaking are two completely different skills. They use different parts of your brain. They require different kinds of practice. And most English learners have spent years building one skill while almost completely ignoring the other. You have built a very strong understanding. You can read English, you can listen to English, you can watch movies in English, you can understand conversations, jokes, news, podcasts, songs. Your understanding is strong. Maybe your understanding is very strong. But speaking is a different thing entirely. Speaking requires you to produce language, not just receive it. Speaking requires you to build sentences in real time, under pressure, while someone is watching you, while someone is waiting for you, while your heart is beating faster and your mind is racing, and you are trying to sound natural and correct at the same time. That is enormously difficult. That is a completely different kind of work, and the fact that you struggle with it does not mean you are failing. It means you have been doing one kind of training, and you need to start doing a different kind. Let me say something else about the gap, because I think this is important. The gap is not the same size for everyone. Some people have a very small gap. They understand English well, and they can speak it fairly well too. Their speaking is not perfect, but it comes out. It flows. It is usable. Other people have a very large gap. Their understanding is excellent. They can read academic English. They can follow fast native speaker conversations. They can watch American television shows without subtitles. But when they open their mouth to speak, almost nothing comes out. Or what comes out feels broken, slow, embarrassing. And if you have a large gap, that is actually very meaningful information. A large gap means you have been doing a lot of input, a lot of receiving, and very little output, very little producing. It means you have built a large library inside your mind, full of English words and phrases, and grammar rules, and sentence patterns. But you have very little experience taking books off the shelves of that library and using them in real time. And there is one more thing about the gap that I want you to understand before we move forward. The gap will not close by itself. It will not close if you just watch more YouTube videos in English. It will not close if you read more English books. It will not close if you keep doing what you have always been doing. Input alone cannot close the gap. The gap only closes when you start producing, when you start speaking, when you start using the English that is already inside you, even imperfectly, even slowly, even with mistakes. That is how the gap closes. And that is what this entire lesson is about. So let's keep going. Let's go deeper. Let's look at what is really happening inside your brain when you try to speak English. Chapter 2. What is happening inside your brain? I want to talk about your brain for a few minutes. Not in a complicated scientific way. I am not a neuroscientist, but I want to explain something about how language works in the brain, because when you understand this, the gap makes a lot more sense. And when things make sense, they become less scary. When you learn a new word in English, let's say the word apologize, your brain does not store it in one single place. It stores it in many places at once. Your brain stores the sound of the word. It stores the meaning. It stores the grammar rules connected to that word. It stores examples of that word in sentences. It stores emotional associations with that word. Did you hear it first? In a happy situation? A stressful situation? Did your teacher say it while smiling? Did someone shout it at you? All of that information gets connected. And over time, as you encounter the word again and again, those connections become stronger. The word becomes more and more familiar to you, more and more automatic. That is what fluency is, at its most basic level. Fluency is automaticity. It means that a word, or a phrase, or a structure has been used so many times that your brain no longer has to think about it consciously. It just happens, automatically. Like the way you can walk and talk at the same time. You don't think about each step. Your legs just move. Now here is the key thing I want you to understand. There are two different kinds of automaticity in language. There is recognition automaticity, and there is production automaticity. Recognition automaticity is when your brain can identify and understand a word immediately, without effort, the moment you encounter it. This is the skill you develop from listening and reading. From input. Production automaticity is when your brain can retrieve and use a word or phrase in real time while you are speaking, without stopping to think about it. This is a completely different skill, and it only develops from speaking, from output. Most English learners have very high recognition automaticity. They have heard and read so many English words and phrases that their brain can recognize them instantly, no problem. But most English learners have very low production automaticity. They have not spoken enough English to build the automatic retrieval pathways that fluency requires. So when they try to speak, their brain has to work very hard. It has to search through everything it knows. It has to choose words carefully. It has to check grammar. It has to build the sentence piece by piece, slowly, under enormous cognitive pressure. And here is where the real problem begins. Your brain can only do a limited number of things at once. Researchers call this your working memory. Working memory is like a small table in your mind. You can only put a few things on that table at one time. When you are speaking in your native language, the table is almost empty. The words come automatically. The grammar comes automatically. So, your working memory is free to focus on what you actually want to say. Your ideas, your feelings, your meaning. When you are speaking in English, for most learners, the table is completely full. You are trying to remember vocabulary. You are trying to apply grammar rules. You are trying to pronounce words correctly. You are trying to understand what the other person just said. You are trying to respond in an appropriate way. You are trying to not make a mistake. You are trying to not look stupid. All of that at once, on a very small table. No wonder the words don't come. No wonder you freeze. Your brain is not broken. Your brain is just overloaded. It is doing too many things at once, and it hasn't had enough practice with any of them to make them automatic. This is such an important thing to understand. Because when you understand this, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking there is something wrong with you, and you start to understand what actually needs to change. What needs to change is not your intelligence. What needs to change is not your motivation. What needs to change is your practice. Specifically, you need practice that builds production automaticity. You need practice that makes speaking faster, lighter, more automatic, so that your working memory has more space to think about what you actually want to say. And we are going to talk about exactly how to do that. But first, I want to talk about something that makes all of this much, much harder. I want to talk about trust. Chapter 3, The Trust Problem. This chapter might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Are you ready? Listen carefully. The reason you can't speak English is not just technical. It is not just about automaticity and working memory and practice methods. There is something deeper, something emotional, something psychological. You don't trust yourself. More specifically, you don't trust your English. And that lack of trust is silently destroying your ability to speak. Let me explain what I mean. When you have a conversation in English, something happens in your mind before, during, and after every single sentence. Before you speak, a part of your brain scans everything you are about to say. It checks for mistakes. It checks for grammar errors. It checks for pronunciation problems. It asks, is this correct? Will this sound strange? Will the other person judge me? Will I look stupid? And when that internal checking process finds something it is uncertain about, it sends a signal, a warning signal. And that warning signal makes you hesitate. It makes you slow down. It makes you change what you were going to say to something safer, something simpler, something you are more sure about. Or it makes you stop altogether. This checking process is your inner critic. And your inner critic is working constantly, every second, every word, every sentence, checking, judging, warning, doubting. For most people, this inner critic is incredibly loud, much louder than it needs to be, and it has been trained by years of English education. Think about this for a moment. How were you taught English in school? How were you evaluated? Most likely, you were evaluated on your mistakes. Every grammar test, every writing assignment, every oral exam The focus was on what you got wrong. Points were taken away for mistakes. Red marks on your paper for errors. Corrección, corrección, corrección. This kind of education does something to you. It teaches you that mistakes are bad. It teaches you that making a mistake is a failure. It teaches you to be afraid of speaking unless you are absolutely certain you are right. And that fear, that deep ingrained fear of making a mistake, that is what your inner critic is protecting you from. Your inner critic is trying to keep you safe. It is trying to prevent you from being embarrassed. It is trying to stop you from looking foolish in front of other people. The problem is, this protection comes at an enormous cost. The cost is your fluency. The cost is your ability to speak. Because fluency cannot grow in an environment of fear and self-doubt. Fluency requires risk. It requires you to open your mouth even when you are not sure. It requires you to use words before you have mastered them. It requires you to make mistakes, hear those mistakes, feel the small discomfort of those mistakes, and keep going. Fluency is built in the doing, not in the preparing. But if every time you are about to speak, your inner critic floods your mind with doubt and warning signals, you never fully do the thing. You half do it. You do a cautious, careful, edited, reduced version of speaking, and that reduced version never grows into real fluency. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you want to learn to ride a bicycle, but every time you get on the bicycle, someone runs alongside you and shouts warnings in your ear. Watch out for that crack in the road. Your left hand is too tight. Your posture is wrong. You might fall. What if you fall? What would people think? Over and over, every second, while you are trying to ride. Could you ever learn to ride in that situation? Maybe, eventually. But it would take much, much longer. And the experience would be miserable. And you would probably fall much more, not less, because you are so focused on the warnings that you forget to actually ride. That is what the inner critic does to your speaking. Now, I am not saying you should never check your English. Self-monitoring is actually a useful skill. Noticing your mistakes, reflecting on them, working to correct them over time, this is valuable. But there is a time for self-monitoring, and there is a time for just speaking. And most English learners do self-monitoring all the time, even in the middle of conversations, even when they need to be focused on communicating, not on correcting. The goal is not to silence your inner critic forever. The goal is to learn when to listen to it and when to put it aside. And right now, most learners need to put it aside much more often than they do. Because here is the truth that most English learners have never heard clearly enough. Your English is good enough. Right now, today. Your English is already good enough to communicate in most situations. The words are there. The grammar is mostly there. The pronunciation is understandable. The people you speak with can understand you. But you don't believe this. You don't trust it. And so you hold back. And the gap stays wide. Let's talk about why this distrust developed. Let's talk about how passive English, the kind most learners have spent years building, has accidentally made the trust problem worse. Chapter 4. Why passive English is not enough. For most of your English learning life, you have been doing something that felt productive, maybe very productive. You have been consuming English, absorbing it, taking it in. You watched movies. You listened to podcasts. You read books and articles. You studied vocabulary lists. You watched YouTube videos like this one. You did grammar exercises. You translated texts. You learned rules and exceptions and irregular verbs. All of that is what we call passive learning or input-based learning, and it is genuinely useful. please don't misunderstand me. Input is essential. You cannot speak a language that you have never heard or read. Input is the raw material. Without it, there is nothing to speak with. But input alone is not enough. And the reason is deeper than just you need to practice speaking. Here is the real issue with passive English. Passive English trains your brain to receive, to accept, to process what comes in. But it does not train your brain to produce, to generate, to build language from scratch, from inside your own mind, on demand, under pressure. When you are listening or reading, the language comes to you. You don't have to create it. It is already there, fully formed, in front of you. Your brain just has to decode it, understand it, connect it to what you already know. When you are speaking, you have to do the opposite. You start with nothing. You start with an idea, a thought, an emotion, something you want to communicate. And you have to build the English yourself. You have to choose the words. You have to construct the grammar. You have to sequence the sounds. You have to do all of this in real time, immediately, with no time to think, no ability to pause and look something up. These are fundamentally different processes. And years of passive learning only trains one of them. But there is something else about passive English that I want to address. Something that actually makes the trust problem worse. When you spend a long time doing passive English, consuming high-quality, polished English from movies and books and professional podcasts, you develop a very high standard for what English should sound like. You have heard so much beautiful, fluent, natural English that your brain has a very detailed picture of what good English sounds like. And then when you open your mouth and your own English comes out, broken and slow and imperfect, your brain immediately compares it to that high standard, and the comparison is painful. Your English sounds nothing like the English in the movies. It sounds nothing like the English of the podcasters you love. It sounds rough, uncertain, wrong. And so you think, I can't speak English. Not because you truly cannot communicate, but because your English does not match the impossibly high standard that years of passive input has built inside your head. This is one of the cruelest traps in language learning. The better your input, the higher your internal standard becomes. And the higher your internal standard, the more painful and inadequate your own speaking feels. But here is the thing. The people you admire who speak English fluently and naturally, they did not sound like that when they started. They did not sound like that in the middle of their learning. They sounded exactly like you sound right now, rough and uncertain and imperfect. The difference is that they kept going. They kept speaking. They let themselves be imperfect. They let their English be rough and uncertain for a while. And slowly, over time, through thousands of hours of imperfect speaking, their English improved. Not because they waited until they were perfect, but because they spoke before they were perfect. That is the path. That is the only path. And there is one more thing I want to say about passive English before we move forward. Something about how it changes your relationship with your own mind. When you do a lot of passive learning, you spend a lot of time in what I call reception mode, listening mode, observer mode. Your brain is quiet and accepting and open. It is not generating. It is not pushing. It is just taking in. Over time, if you spend most of your English learning time in reception mode, that becomes your default mode. That is the mode your brain expects to be in when English is happening. And when you suddenly have to switch from reception mode to production mode to speaking mode, it feels jarring. It feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. Like someone has suddenly asked you to run after you have been sitting still for hours. Your brain needs practice switching into production mode. It needs practice being in production mode. And the only way to give it that practice is to actually speak, to actually produce regularly. Think consistently, imperfectly, bravely. We are going to talk about exactly how to do that. But first, let's go deeper into the emotional side of this. Let's talk about fear, because fear is one of the most powerful forces keeping you silent. Chapter 5. The role of fear. Fear. Let's talk about fear honestly. Fear of speaking English is real. It is not imaginary. It is not just lack of confidence or lack of preparation. It is a genuine emotional response that your brain and body produce in certain situations. And for many English learners, speaking in English, especially in front of native speakers or strangers or people they want to impress, triggers a real fear response. Your heart beats faster, your hands sweat a little, your throat feels tight, your mind goes blank, your words disappear, you feel heat in your face. These are not psychological weaknesses. These are physiological responses. Your nervous system has activated what some researchers call the fight or flight response. The same system that helped your ancestors survive dangerous situations is now activating because you are about to say, "Could you repeat that, please?" in English. This seems absurd, right? There is no danger. No one is going to hurt you if you make a grammar mistake, but your nervous system does not always know the difference between a real threat and a social threat. And for social creatures, like human beings, social threats, the threat of being judged, rejected, embarrassed, or humiliated, feel very real and very dangerous. This is why the fear response activates when you speak English. Your brain has learned that speaking English in certain situations might lead to a social threat. You might look stupid. You might be misunderstood. You might be corrected in a way that feels humiliating. You might say something wrong and see the other person's expression change. And so your brain is trying to protect you. It is trying to protect your social reputation and your emotional safety. The problem, again, is that this protection has a terrible cost. The cost is silence. The cost is missed opportunities. The cost is staying small and staying hidden while life moves around you in English. Now, I want to say something important here. I do not think the answer to fear is to simply tell yourself to be brave. Just speak. Just do it. Stop being afraid. This advice is not wrong exactly, but it is not enough. It does not address why the fear is there and what it actually needs. Let me explain fear a little more carefully. Fear in language learning comes from a specific thought pattern. That thought pattern is this: if I make a mistake, something bad will happen. What is the something bad? Different people have different answers. For some, it is embarrassment. I will look stupid in front of people I respect. For others, it is rejection. If I speak poorly, people will think less of me and stop wanting to talk to me. For others, it is identity threat. If I can't express myself properly in English, people won't understand who I really am. These fears are all understandable. They all make sense given human nature and the social pressures many English learners face, but they are all built on an assumption that is mostly false. The assumption is that other people are judging your English as harshly as you are judging it yourself. But here is the truth. Most people, most of the time, are not focusing on your grammar errors. They are focusing on what you are trying to communicate. They are listening for your meaning, your intent, your personality. They are not keeping a mental list of your mistakes. And actually, most people who have learned any foreign language, which is most people in the world, have enormous respect and sympathy for someone who is trying to communicate in a second language. They know how difficult it is. They remember their own struggles. They are not judging you. they are often quietly impressed that you are trying at all. The harsh judge is not the person in front of you. The harsh judge is inside your own head. And here is something even more important. Even if someone did judge you harshly for making a mistake in English, what would actually happen? Probably nothing. Nothing would happen. You would feel a moment of embarrassment, and then it would pass, and you would still be alive, and your English would be the same as it was before. Mistakes in language learning are not catastrophic. They only feel that way. I want to introduce you to a concept that I think is very useful here. It is called the optimal challenge zone. Some people call it the zone of proximal development, but I prefer to call it the speaking sweet spot. The speaking sweet spot is the place where a conversation is challenging enough to push you to try new things, to reach for new words, to build new sentences, but not so challenging that you shut down completely. When you are in the sweet spot, you feel a little bit nervous, a little bit stretched, but you are still functioning. You are still producing. You are still speaking. When the challenge is too low, you are bored. When the challenge is too high, you freeze. And the goal is to find conversations and situations and practice environments that put you in the sweet spot. Not the most terrifying possible scenario, not a completely comfortable and safe scenario either. Something in between, something that pushes you just enough to grow, but not so much that it triggers the full fear response. We are going to talk about how to find and create those situations. But first, let me address something specific, something many people wonder about but never ask. Why do some people seem to have almost no fear about speaking English, while others are paralyzed by it? Is it personality? Is it culture? Is it intelligence? What is the difference between a brave English speaker and a frozen one? Chapter 6. Why some people speak easily. Have you ever met someone who just speaks? They open their mouth and English comes out. Maybe not perfect English, maybe with an accent, maybe with some grammar mistakes, but it comes out confidently, easily, without apparent fear or hesitation. And you wonder how. What do they know that you don't know? What is their secret? I have thought about this a lot, and I have worked with many English learners at different levels. And I think there are a few key things that separate the people who speak easily from the people who freeze. The first thing is this: they have decided that communication matters more than correctness. Read that again. Communication matters more than correctness. This is a fundamental shift in values, and it changes everything. When your number one goal in speaking is to be correct, to avoid mistakes, to use perfect grammar and perfect pronunciation, you will always struggle, because perfect is impossible. Perfect is a moving target, and the pursuit of perfect will keep you silent forever, because you will never feel ready, never feel prepared enough, never feel certain enough to open your mouth. But when your number one goal in speaking is to communicate, to share an idea, to be understood, to connect with another person, suddenly the game changes. Suddenly, mistakes become acceptable. Because mistakes don't usually prevent communication. A grammar mistake does not make you incomprehensible. A mispronounced word does not make your meaning disappear. You can make mistakes and still be understood. You can be imperfect and still connect. The people who speak easily have made this switch. They have decided, consciously or unconsciously, that being understood is the victory. Not being correct, not being impressive, not sounding like a native speaker, just being understood. And when communication is the goal, speaking becomes much less terrifying. The second thing that separates easy speakers from frozen ones is this: they have experience with imperfection. They have already made mistakes in English many times in front of other people, and they survived, and nothing terrible happened, and they learned from those mistakes and continued. And because they have this history of surviving imperfection, they are not afraid of it anymore, or at least not as afraid. They have evidence, real-life evidence, from their own experience that making a mistake in English is not the end of the world. Most people who freeze when speaking English have very little experience with speaking English imperfectly in front of others. They have been avoiding it, protecting themselves from it, and because they have avoided it, they have never built up the evidence that it is survivable. So every time they face the prospect of speaking, it still feels like a catastrophe. The third thing is this: easy speakers have stopped comparing their English to native speaker English. This is huge. This is enormous, and it is something that takes real mental work to do. Most English learners have been taught, either directly or indirectly, that the goal of learning English is to sound like a native speaker. That native speaker English is the standard. That any accent or error is a falling short of that standard. This is a damaging belief. It is also increasingly recognized as a kind of cultural bias. The world is full of people who speak English as a second language. In fact, there are more non-native English speakers in the world than native English speakers. The English language does not belong only to native speakers. It belongs to everyone who uses it. When you stop comparing yourself to native speakers and start comparing yourself to where you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, everything looks different. Your progress becomes visible. Your competence becomes real. Your confidence grows. Easy speakers have often made this shift. They have decided that their English, with their accent and their occasional mistakes and their sometimes limited vocabulary, is valid English. It is real English. It counts. And finally, there is one more thing that easy speakers often have that frozen speakers don't. And this is perhaps the most important one. They have a reason to speak that is bigger than their fear. They have something they desperately want to say, a story they need to share, a relationship they want to build, a dream they are pursuing, a career that requires English, a place they want to live, a person they love. When the reason to speak is big enough, fear shrinks in comparison. Not to zero, maybe, but enough. Enough to open your mouth. Enough to keep going. And this is something worth reflecting on for yourself. What is your reason? Why does your English matter to you? Why are you here, right now, watching this video? What are you trying to reach, to build, to become? Because when you connect your English learning to something that genuinely matters to you, deeply matters to you, not because someone told you that you should learn English, but because you yourself have a vision for what English will open up for you, that is where real motivation comes from. And real motivation gives you the courage to speak. Chapter 7: The Silence Loop. I want to talk about a pattern I see constantly in English learners. I call it the silence loop. And once you recognize it, you will see it everywhere, including in yourself. The silence loop works like this. You want to speak English, but you are afraid of making mistakes, so you don't speak. Because you don't speak, your speaking never improves. Because your speaking never improves, you continue to feel inadequate and unconfident. Because you feel inadequate and unconfident, you are afraid to speak. Because you are afraid to speak, you don't speak. Around and around. The loop continues. And the silence loop is reinforced by something else. The more time passes, the more pressure you put on yourself to speak perfectly. Because you think, I have been studying English for 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years. I should be better than this by now. And because you should be better, every mistake feels worse. Every hesitation feels more shameful. The expectations rise. The fear rises. The silence deepens. End quote. The silence loop also affects how you see other people's English. The more time you spend not speaking, the more you notice how fluent other people seem to be. You see someone on YouTube speaking English effortlessly. You meet someone at work who switches between their native language and English without blinking. You hear a classmate give a presentation in confident, flowing English, and you feel small. You feel like everyone else has crossed a bridge that you are still standing at the edge of. What you don't see is that these people made thousands of mistakes to get where they are. What you don't see is all the silent hours they spent afraid, just like you. What you don't see is the journey. You only see the destination. And comparing your journey to someone else's destination is one of the most destructive things you can do to your own motivation. Now, how do you break the silence loop? You break it by doing the one thing the loop is designed to prevent. You speak. I know that sounds simple, too simple. But let me be more specific, because the kind of speaking matters. You don't break the silence loop by throwing yourself into the most terrifying English situation you can imagine. You don't break it by forcing yourself into conversations that are completely beyond your current level. That approach often backfires. It confirms your fears. It makes the loop tighter, not looser. You break the silence loop by finding small, manageable, low-stakes opportunities to speak. And you take those opportunities every day, consistently, over time. You speak to yourself. Yes, to yourself. You narrate your actions in English while you are cooking or walking or cleaning. I am cutting the vegetables. Now I will add the onion. This smells good. This sounds strange, I know, but it is genuinely valuable. It trains production automaticity. It gets your brain comfortable being in production mode. And it requires no audience, no judgment, no risk. You speak to recordings. You record yourself on your phone. You say what you did today. You describe an image. You retell a story you know well. You listen back, not to harshly judge yourself, but to notice, to observe, to track your progress over time. You speak in short, safe interactions. You order your food in English. You greet someone in English. You ask a simple question in English. One sentence, one moment. That's it. No need for a long conversation. Just one small act of producing English in the real world. Each of these small actions chips away at the silence loop. Each one builds a tiny piece of evidence that speaking is possible, that you can do it, that the world does not end when you try. And over time, those small actions compound, they add up, and one day you realize that the loop is a little looser, that speaking feels a little less terrifying, that you are slowly and imperfectly and really getting better. Let's continue. Let's talk about something specific now. Let's talk about what happens when you are in the middle of a real conversation and the words stop coming. Chapter 8. When your mind goes blank. This is a situation every English learner knows. You are in the middle of a conversation. Things are going okay. You are managing. And then suddenly, someone says something or asks you something, and your mind goes completely blank. Not a little blank, completely blank, as if someone has pressed a delete button in your brain. The English that you know, the words you have studied, the sentences you can produce when you are alone and relaxed, all of it is suddenly gone. There is nothing there, just silence and panic. Why does this happen? It happens because of stress. When you experience sudden stress or pressure, your brain shifts into a mode that prioritizes immediate survival. Attention narrows. Complex thinking becomes harder. Memory retrieval is disrupted. This is the same mechanism that makes it hard to remember a phone number when you are under pressure, or why athletes sometimes miss an easy shot in a high-stakes game. Under stress, performance drops. For language production, this effect is dramatic. The higher the stress, the harder it is to retrieve and produce language. And the blank moment feeds the fear. Because now, you are not just afraid of making mistakes. You are afraid of the blank itself. What if I go blank? What if I have nothing to say? What if I just stand there in silence? And that fear creates more stress. And more stress makes it more likely that you will go blank. Another loop, another cycle. So, how do you manage the blank? How do you handle the moment when your mind empties and the English disappears? First, let's talk about something physical. When you feel yourself going blank, your body is usually tense. Your shoulders are up. Your breathing is shallow. Your jaw is tight. This physical tension makes the mental blank worse. There is a strong connection between your body and your brain, and relaxing your body even a little can help your brain access language more easily. So one technique is this. When you feel yourself going blank, take one quiet, slow breath. Not a dramatic, obvious breath. Just one normal-looking breath, slightly slower and deeper than usual. Let your shoulders drop a little, and as you breathe, give your brain 2 or 3 seconds to reset. It sounds too simple, but it works. The blank rarely lasts longer than 3 to 5 seconds if you don't panic. If you panic, you make it worse. If you breathe and wait, the language usually comes back. Second, have a few rescue phrases that you practice until they are completely automatic. Rescue phrases are simple sentences that you can say while your brain is searching for the right words. They buy you time. They keep the conversation alive. They signal to the other person that you are thinking, not stopped. Here are some examples. That's a good question. Let me think for a moment. How do I say this? Let me think. I'm looking for the right word. Give me just a second. I'm not sure exactly how to say this, but these phrases serve 2 purposes. They fill the silence so you don't feel the pressure of blank space, and they normalize the act of searching for words. Because here is something important. Native speakers search for words too. They pause. They say and and you know what I mean, and how can I put this? Searching for words is not a sign of language weakness. It is a normal part of human communication. The difference is that when a native speaker searches for words, nobody notices because it seems natural. But when a second language speaker searches for words, they feel like it is obvious, like it is a failure. But it is not. It is just thinking. And having rescue phrases makes that thinking visible in a way that feels natural and confident. Third, and this is important, practice speaking when you are tired or distracted or a little bit stressed. Most language practice happens in ideal conditions. You sit down with your book or your app or your speaking partner when you are fresh and rested and prepared. And then real conversations happen in real conditions, which are never ideal. You are at work after a long day. You are in a noisy coffee shop. You are trying to handle an unexpected problem. You are worried about something else entirely. If you only ever practice English in perfect conditions, you will never build the resilience to speak in real conditions. So deliberately practice in imperfect conditions sometimes. Speak to yourself while you are cooking dinner. Record a voice memo while you are walking. Practice a conversation topic when you are a little tired. Train your English to function in the real world, not just in a quiet study room. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little. I want to talk about something that might surprise you. I want to talk about the way the language you already have, the English already inside you, is more powerful than you think. Chapter 9. You already have the English. This is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. So I am going to say it slowly. I am going to say it clearly. You already have the English. It is already inside you. The words are there. The grammar is there. The ability to communicate is there. You are not missing the English. You are not empty. You are full. You are full of English that you have absorbed over years of studying and listening and reading. The problem is not that you don't have it. The problem is that you don't trust it. You don't believe it. You don't access it. You hold it back. Let me explain what I mean with an example. Imagine you know the word beautiful. You know what it means. You have heard it thousands of times. You have read it in books. You have seen it used in sentences. When someone says beautiful, you understand it instantly. Now, imagine someone asks you to describe a sunset you once saw, and you think, how do I say this in English? And you start looking, searching your mind for the perfect way to describe it. And maybe you are looking for something sophisticated, something impressive, some elegant phrase. And while you are searching, you forget the simplest, most useful, most accurate word you already know. Beautiful. The answer was there from the beginning, but your mind passed right over it because it seemed too simple, too basic, too easy. Surely, you need something more impressive than that, but you don't. Beautiful is perfect. Beautiful is the right word. Beautiful does the job. And while you were searching for something more sophisticated, you lost time, lost momentum, and said nothing. This is what happens to English learners constantly. They have what they need. They bypass it, looking for something better. And in the process, they lose the moment. The vocabulary you have, the grammar you understand, the phrases you know, these are enough to communicate in most situations. Not every situation, not academic presentations, not legal negotiations, not medical emergencies, but most everyday situations, your English is enough. The learners who speak most fluently are not always the ones with the biggest vocabulary. They are the ones who use what they have most efficiently. They don't wait for the perfect word. They use the good enough word. They don't search for the impressive grammar structure. They use the clear, simple structure that they know works. And here is something else about what you already have. Your English is more comprehensive than you realize because language learning is not linear. It does not happen only when you are consciously studying. It happens all the time. Every English song you have ever heard, every movie you have ever watched with subtitles, every English phrase you have ever read on the internet, every conversation you have ever had, even a bad one, even a short one, all of it has been absorbed. All of it has been stored. All of it is in there. You have built a massive internal library of English. The books are on the shelves, but you spend so much time staring at the locked door that you forget the library is already open. It has always been open. You just have to walk in. And here is the permission I want to give you. The permission that maybe no teacher has ever given you clearly enough. You are allowed to use the English you have, even if it is not perfect. You are allowed to say things that are grammatically imperfect. You are allowed to use a simple word when you can't think of the sophisticated one. You are allowed to speak slowly. You are allowed to repeat yourself. You are allowed to ask the other person to slow down or say something again. You are allowed to make mistakes. All of this is allowed. All of this is normal. All of this is part of being a human being, using a language that you are still learning. Give yourself this permission, not just intellectually. Feel it, believe it. Let it change the way you approach speaking. Because when you truly accept that what you have is enough to begin, everything changes. The weight lifts. The fear doesn't disappear, but it shrinks, and you can move forward. Chapter 10. The Output Trap. I want to address something specific now. Something that comes up a lot when people try to improve their speaking. Many English learners, when they decide they want to improve their speaking, immediately go looking for output opportunities, speaking partners, conversation classes, language exchange apps, tutor sessions. This is good. Output is necessary. We have established that. But there is a trap here. A trap that many learners fall into. I call it the output trap. The output trap happens when you treat output as the practice of performing rather than the practice of building. When you think of speaking practice as showing what you can do rather than developing what you can do. Let me explain the difference. When you treat speaking practice as performance, you step into every speaking situation focused on showing your best English. You choose safe topics. You stay in your comfort zone. You use words and structures you are already confident with. You avoid mistakes by avoiding challenges. And here is the problem. You cannot grow by performing. You can only grow by attempting things that are slightly beyond your current ability. By reaching for words you are not completely sure about. By trying sentence structures that are new to you. By taking linguistic risks. Growth happens at the edge of your ability, not in the center of your comfort zone. If every speaking practice session sounds like your best English, it probably means you are not practicing the things that will make you better. You are just rehearsing what you already know. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. Performance practice feels comfortable and confidence building in the short term, but it does not move you forward. It just keeps you where you are, doing the same things more quickly. Developmental practice often feels uncomfortable. It feels messy. You say things wrong. You stop in the middle of sentences. You use words incorrectly and have to backtrack. You reach for a phrase and it doesn't come out right. You feel like your English is getting worse, not better. But this is exactly where growth happens. When you are reaching, when you are trying, when you are making the attempt, even before you are fully ready. I want to give you a concept that language researchers talk about. They call it pushed output. Pushed output is output where you are pushed by the situation or by yourself to produce language that is slightly beyond your current comfortable level. Pushed output is uncomfortable, but it is incredibly effective at driving language acquisition. Here is why. When you attempt to say something in English that is at the edge of your ability, your brain often encounters a gap, a moment where it knows what it wants to say, but does not know exactly how to say it in English. This gap moment is actually very valuable. It is a signal to your brain that says, attention, there is something I need here, something missing, something to learn. And in that gap moment, your brain is most ready to learn. It is searching. It is hungry. If you then encounter the right word or the right phrase, either through looking it up or hearing it from someone else, you absorb it much more deeply than you would have if you had just passively seen it in a vocabulary list. This is why output is not just about speaking. Output is a learning tool. The act of trying to produce language, even when you fail, makes your brain more receptive to learning. So when you practice speaking and you make mistakes, those mistakes are not failures. They are learning moments. They are your brain identifying what it needs next. They are the gaps that your future learning will fill. So, how do you avoid the output trap? How do you make your speaking practice developmental rather than performative? Here is one practical approach. Every time you have a speaking practice session, set yourself 1 or 2 stretch goals. A stretch goal is something slightly beyond your current comfortable ability. Maybe it is a grammar structure you learned recently but haven't used in conversation yet. Maybe it is a topic area where you have limited vocabulary. Maybe it is the goal of speaking for 3 minutes without stopping, even if what comes out is imperfect. Maybe it is the goal of using 5 new words you studied this week. The stretch goal makes your practice intentional. It gives you something specific to reach for, and it prevents you from just performing the English you already know. And here is the key thing. When you attempt the stretch goal and fail, when you reach for the new grammar and get it wrong, when you use the new word incorrectly, that is success. That is growth happening. That is exactly the kind of practice that makes you better. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the specific practice methods that build speaking fluency most effectively. Chapter 11. Methods that actually work. I want to be practical now. I want to give you specific tools and methods, things you can actually do starting today to begin closing the gap. I am going to describe several methods. They are not all equally right for every person. Some will suit your personality and situation better than others. I encourage you to try all of them and see what works for you. Method 1. Talk to yourself. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to go deeper. Talking to yourself in English is one of the most underrated and effective speaking practices available to any learner. Here is why it works. When you talk to yourself, there is no audience, no one to impress, no one to judge. The pressure is almost zero, and when the pressure is low, your brain can experiment more freely. It can reach for new words, it can try new structures, it can make mistakes without consequence. This is the ideal environment for building production automaticity. Low pressure, high volume, constant practice. But how do you do it? What do you actually say? Here are some approaches. You can narrate your day as you go through it. I am getting up now. The floor is cold this morning. I need to find my slippers. I think they are under the bed. Narration keeps you speaking in real time about real things. It connects your English to your actual life. You can use the delayed recall method. After doing something, watching a show, reading an article, having a meeting, spending time with family, wait 10 or 15 minutes and then describe what happened in English. In as much detail as you can. This builds both your vocabulary and your ability to construct narrative in English. You can have imaginary conversations. Think of someone you would like to talk to. Maybe a mentor, a friend who speaks English, someone you admire, and have a conversation with them in your head in English. Ask them questions, answer them, respond to their imaginary responses. You can argue with yourself. Pick a topic and take one side, then switch and take the opposite side. This is excellent practice for producing complex, opinion-based language, the kind of language that is often hardest to produce in real conversations. All of these approaches work because they put your brain in production mode without the social pressure of a real audience. They build the habits and pathways that make real speaking easier. Method 2. The shadowing technique. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a native or fluent English speaker and try to say exactly what they are saying at exactly the same time, or just a fraction of a second behind, like a shadow, following very closely. This is one of the most powerful techniques for improving pronunciation, rhythm, intonation, and natural sentence flow. It is also very challenging. Here is how to do it effectively. Choose something to shadow: a podcast, a YouTube video, an audiobook, a movie scene. Choose something slightly below your understanding level, not your most advanced listening, but something you can understand almost completely. This is important. If you don't understand most of what is being said, you can't shadow it properly. Start with just a few seconds at a time. Listen to 2 or 3 sentences, then replay and shadow those sentences, saying them out loud at the same time. Focus on the rhythm and the flow, not just the words. Notice how the speaker connects words together. Notice where they pause and where they don't. Notice how their voice rises and falls. Do this for just 10 to 15 minutes a day. Consistency matters much more than duration here. The reason shadowing works so well is that it forces your mouth and brain to produce language patterns that are more natural than anything you would generate on your own. By mimicking fluent speech, you are building new motor habits in your mouth, new rhythm patterns in your brain, new ways of connecting words and phrases that make your own speaking sound more natural. Many serious language learners credit shadowing as one of the most significant tools in their development. Method 3. The 300-Sentence Challenge. This is a method I find very effective for building the bridge between understanding and producing specific grammar and vocabulary. Here is how it works. Take one grammar structure that you understand but struggle to produce. For example, the present perfect tense, or conditional sentences, or passive voice. Choose one structure. Now set yourself a goal. You are going to use this structure 300 times in speaking practice. 300 times. That sounds like a lot, but if you do 30 per day, that's just 10 days. And you can scatter the practice throughout your day while talking to yourself, while speaking with a partner, while practicing with recordings. The reason 300 times matters is this. Language structures become automatic when they have been used, not just seen or studied, but actively used, a large number of times. 50 times is probably not enough for most people. 100 might be enough for some things. 300 almost always produces noticeable automaticity. By the end of the challenge, you should find that the structure starts appearing naturally in your speech without conscious effort. That is the goal. That is automaticity. That is what fluency is built from. Method 4. Tell stories. Stories are one of the most powerful containers for language development. Humans are story processing machines. Our brains are designed to organize experience into narrative. And when you tell a story in English, you are using some of the most complex and natural language production that exists. Start with short, simple stories. Stories from your own life. Describe a meal you remember. Describe a time you were surprised. Describe a difficult moment you went through and how it ended. Describe a funny thing that happened to you recently. Then tell the same story again and again. Tell it to yourself. Tell it to a speaking partner. Record yourself telling it. Each time you tell it, it gets a little smoother, a little faster, a little more natural. And then try harder stories. Describe a book you read. Explain a film you watched. Tell a friend's story. Describe a historical event. Each new story is a new challenge, new vocabulary, new structure, new territory for your brain. The act of retelling is important. The first time you tell a story in English, it is often rough, very rough. The second time, it is a little smoother. By the 5th or 6th time, It often flows quite naturally, and the language patterns you developed for that story start appearing in other contexts too. This is called the transfer effect. Language you practice in one context gradually transfers to other contexts. Your vocabulary grows wider, your grammar becomes more flexible, your speaking becomes more fluid. Method 5. Speaking partner or conversation club. At some point, you need to practice speaking with real human beings. Not just yourself, not just recordings. Real people with their unpredictable responses and their different accents and their unexpected questions and their real-time reactions. There are many ways to find speaking partners. Language exchange apps connect you with native English speakers who are learning your language. You speak English with them for 30 minutes, then switch and speak their language. It is free, it is mutually beneficial, and it creates real communicative pressure in a low-stakes environment. Conversation clubs, which exist in many cities and online, are groups of language learners who meet regularly to practice speaking. The social dynamic is low pressure because everyone in the room is learning. No one is judging your grammar. Everyone is focused on communicating and helping each other grow. Online tutoring platforms allow you to book sessions with professional English tutors or conversational partners. These are good if you want more structured feedback and guidance. But here is the key thing about any human speaking practice. The goal is not to avoid mistakes. The goal is to get enough speaking volume that mistakes become learning opportunities rather than traumatic events. You need quantity, hours of speaking, hundreds of conversations, not all of them perfect, most of them imperfect, but all of them valuable. Think of it like building physical fitness. You don't become fit by reading about exercise. You don't become fit by watching others exercise. You become fit by exercising over and over, imperfectly, sweating and struggling, and gradually, over time, you get stronger. Speaking is your exercise. Find ways to do it more. Find ways to make it part of your daily routine, and protect that time as something important, because it is important. It is the most important thing you can do for your speaking, and the more you protect it, the more it grows. The more it grows, the less you have to protect it, because it will have become a part of you, a part of your daily life, a part of who you are. Method 6. The daily question, practice. This is a simple but powerful method. Every day, you give yourself one question to answer in English, out loud, for at least 2 to 3 minutes without stopping. The question can be about anything. What is the most difficult decision you have ever made? If you could change one thing about where you grew up, what would it be? What is a skill you wish you had developed earlier in life? What does a perfect day look like to you? These questions are not random. They are chosen because they ask you to produce complex, personal, opinion-based English. The kind of English that is hardest to produce under pressure. The kind of English that comes up in real conversations when someone asks you something meaningful. Speaking for 2 or 3 minutes on a personal topic without stopping is enormously challenging for most learners. The first few times, you will probably reach 30 seconds and run out of things to say. That is fine. That is the edge you are working at. Over time, as you do this every day, you will develop the ability to sustain longer stretches of connected, meaningful English speech. And this carries directly into real conversations. When someone asks you a real question, you no longer freeze after one sentence. You have practiced going deeper. You have practiced keeping the conversation alive with your own voice. Chapter 12. Dealing with correction. Let's talk about correction. This is a topic that brings up complicated emotions for many English learners, and I want to address it honestly and thoroughly. When someone corrects your English, how do you feel? For many learners, correction feels like a small attack. Even when the corrector is kind, even when the correction is clearly meant to help, it can feel embarrassing. It can feel like evidence of your inadequacy. It can make you want to speak less, not more. It can feed the inner critic. And some learners, after being corrected several times in a row, or after being corrected in a public or humiliating way, develop what is called correction trauma, a deep resistance and fear of being corrected that leads to extreme self-monitoring and, ultimately, to speaking less. This is a tragedy, because correction is one of the most powerful learning tools available. Feedback is essential for growth. Without feedback, you don't know what to improve. Without correction, mistakes become habits. So, how do you change your relationship with correction? First, reframe what correction means. When someone corrects your English, they are giving you a gift. They are giving you specific, actionable information about how to improve. They are treating you like someone whose English matters and can grow. Indifference is much more damaging than correction. If someone never corrects you, it might mean they don't care whether you improve. Second, distinguish between types of correction. Not all correction is equally useful. Correction that comes after you have finished speaking, focused on one or two key points, is very useful. Correction that interrupts you every other word, covering every possible error, is overwhelming and counterproductive. It is okay to tell your speaking partner, "Please let me finish what I'm saying, then correct me at the end." Good speaking partners will appreciate that guidance. Third, and this is very important, ask for the corrections you want. Different learners need different kinds of feedback at different stages. If you are working on pronunciation, ask your partner to focus on that. If you are working on using a specific grammar structure, ask them to note whether you used it correctly. Targeted feedback is much more useful than general feedback on everything at once. And finally, create a system for learning from corrections. When someone corrects you, don't just nod and move on. Write it down. Repeat the correct form 3 times immediately. Use it in a new sentence right away. Put it in a notebook that you review regularly. Correct language that you absorb in the moment of speaking is far more memorable than correct language that you read in a grammar book. Your goal over time is to become someone who welcomes correction, not because you are a masochist, not because you enjoy being told you are wrong, but because you understand that correction is one of the fastest paths to improvement, and improvement is what you want. This is a mindset shift. It takes time, but it is absolutely achievable. Now, let me talk about something that connects correction, confidence, and speaking. Let me talk about the role of vocabulary in your speaking confidence. Chapter 13: Vocabulary and Speaking Confidence. Most English learners believe that the main reason they can't speak is that they don't know enough words, and so they spend enormous amounts of time and energy learning new vocabulary apps, vocabulary lists, word-of-the-day emails, flashcard systems. And while vocabulary learning is valuable, I want to challenge the belief that vocabulary is the main obstacle to speaking. Here is the truth. For most intermediate and upper intermediate learners, vocabulary is not the main problem. You already know enough words to communicate in most everyday situations. The main problem is access, retrieval, trust. You know the words, but under the pressure of speaking, you cannot access them quickly enough, or you doubt whether you are using them correctly. or you reach for a sophisticated word when a simple one would work perfectly well. This is a very different problem from not knowing vocabulary, and it requires a very different solution. Studying new vocabulary does not solve the retrieval problem. Practicing speaking is the only thing that solves the retrieval problem. But here is something interesting. The way you study vocabulary can make a difference. Vocabulary that you encounter and study in context, in sentences, in conversations, in stories, is much more accessible for production than vocabulary that you study in isolated lists. When you learn a word in a list, you know the word and its translation or definition. You have a thin connection. The word is in your library, but it is in a dark corner, on a high shelf, behind other things. When you learn a word in context, embedded in a story, or a conversation, or a memorable sentence, surrounded by emotions and images and meaning, you have a much richer connection. The word is on a well-lit shelf, clearly labeled, easy to reach. And when you actually use the word in speaking, even once, it moves to an even more accessible location. It moves from passive to active storage. So, the vocabulary advice I want to give you is this. Stop trying to learn 50 new words a week. Learn 20 or even 10, but learn them deeply. Learn them in context. Learn them with examples. Learn them with emotions attached. Use them in sentences. Use them in stories. Use them in conversation. Go deep with fewer words rather than wide with many words. Your speaking will benefit enormously from this approach. And here is a specific technique that many language learners find very powerful. It is called the example sentence method. When you learn a new word, don't just learn its meaning. Immediately create 3 original sentences using that word. Sentences about your own life. Sentences about things you actually think and feel and experience. Not textbook sentences, your sentences. I felt hesitant when my manager asked me to present in the meeting. She was hesitant about trying the new dish, but in the end, she loved it. Being hesitant at the beginning is normal, but I cannot stay hesitant forever. 3 sentences about your world, about things you care about in your voice. Now that word, hesitant, is no longer just a definition in a list. It is connected to your experience. It is connected to your emotions. It is connected to your identity. It is infinitely more likely to come out naturally when you need it in conversation. This takes more time than studying word lists, but it produces real vocabulary growth, vocabulary that you can actually use. Chapter 14. The role of listening in speaking improvement. I want to come back to listening for a moment, because I said earlier that passive input alone is not enough, and I stand by that. But I don't want you to think that listening is not important for speaking development. It is. It is very important, just not in the way that most people think. Most people listen to improve their listening. That is the goal. They want to understand more, so they choose difficult listening material. They push their comprehension. They study the vocabulary in the listening. They check their understanding. All of that is valid, but there is a different way of listening that directly improves speaking, and most people don't do it. This is called active output-oriented listening, and here is how it works. When you listen to English, instead of just absorbing meaning, you pay specific attention to how things are said, not just what is said. You notice the phrasing. You notice the sentence structure. You notice how the speaker builds their ideas. You notice the specific words they use to connect thoughts, the transitions, the hedges. the ways they soften or strengthen a point. And then, after listening, you try to reproduce those patterns in your own speaking. You borrow the structures, not the content, but the architecture. The way the speaker organized their ideas and the words they use to express relationships between those ideas. This is how children learn language. They don't just absorb meaning, they absorb structure. They hear, "I was wondering if you could," and they store not just the meaning, but the pattern. And then they produce that pattern themselves. Adult language learners can deliberately do what children do naturally, but it requires intentional listening with awareness of structure and pattern, not just comprehension of content. Let me give you a specific exercise for this. Choose a video or podcast episode in English, something about 10 to 15 minutes long, something where the speaker is talking naturally, conversationally, about a topic you are interested in. Listen to it once for comprehension. Understand the content. Enjoy it. Then, listen again, but this time with a different focus. This time, you are listening for useful language patterns, phrases that seem useful for expressing ideas, sentence structures that seem flexible and applicable to many situations, ways of introducing arguments, responding to counter-arguments, expressing uncertainty, making strong claims. Every time you hear something that seems useful, pause the audio, say it out loud, repeat it a few times, and then try to use it in an original sentence of your own, about something different, about your own life or your own ideas. This is called noticing and using. It is one of the most effective bridges between listening and speaking. Over time, if you do this regularly, you will find that your speaking becomes richer, more nuanced, more varied, more natural sounding. Because you are not just making up English from scratch every time. You are drawing on a growing repertoire of patterns and phrases that you have carefully collected and practiced. This is how really good English speakers develop. Not by knowing every grammar rule, but by having a rich library of real, working, usable language patterns that they can deploy in real conversations. Chapter 15. Making peace with your accent. I need to say something that I think is very important, and that some learners need to hear very clearly. Your accent is not a problem. Your accent is you. The specific way you pronounce English words, the music and rhythm and color that your native language gives to your English, that is not something to be ashamed of or to try to erase. It is part of who you are. It is part of your story. It carries where you come from, your history, your identity. I understand that many English learners feel strong pressure to sound as close to a native speaker as possible, and I understand why. In some contexts, in some jobs, in some social environments, there is real bias against strong accents. That is a real problem in the world, and I don't want to minimize it. But the answer to accent-based bias is not to feel shame about your accent. The answer is to continue developing your English, to become more fluent, to communicate more effectively, and to know that a person who communicates clearly and confidently with an accent is far more impressive than a person who says almost nothing because they are waiting to sound perfect. And here is something very important to know about accent and comprehensibility. These are not the same thing. An accent is the specific phonetic quality of your speech, the way individual sounds are produced. Comprehensibility is whether listeners can understand you easily. You can have a strong accent and still be completely comprehensible. And comprehensibility is the goal, not accent neutrality, not sounding like a native speaker, not erasing your linguistic background. The goal is for people to understand you without difficulty. Most learners who have studied English for several years are much more comprehensible than they believe. The sounds that feel very wrong to them because they can hear the distance from the correct pronunciation, often sound completely fine to a listener who is focused on meaning rather than phonetics. So work on your pronunciation. Absolutely. Pronunciation work has value, but work on it as a matter of clarity and communication, not as a matter of shame or identity. And when you speak, speak with confidence in your accent. Own it. Don't apologize for it. Your accent tells a story, and every person's story deserves to be told. Chapter 16. Building the speaking habit. We have talked about fear. We have talked about the gap. We have talked about methods. But all of this knowledge is worthless if it stays in your head. It only has value when you act on it. And action, in language learning, requires habit. Regular, daily, consistent action. Not occasional bursts of intense effort, followed by long periods of doing nothing. Habits. Let me talk about what a speaking habit actually looks like. A speaking habit does not require hours every day. Many people believe that real progress requires enormous time investment. 3 hours a day, 5 hours a day, full immersion, complete lifestyle change. And while more time generally means faster progress, that is not the barrier for most people. The barrier for most people is consistency, not duration. 20 minutes every day for a year is vastly more effective than 10 hours one weekend every month. So a speaking habit starts small, very small if necessary. 10 minutes a day, that's it. 10 minutes of deliberate speaking practice every day without exception. What does 10 minutes look like? You talk to yourself while you make your morning tea. You record a 2-minute voice memo about your plan for the day. You shadow a podcast episode for 5 minutes. You read an English paragraph out loud 3 times, focusing on natural rhythm and flow. Small, consistent, every day. And here is the key to making a habit stick. You connect it to something that is already a fixed part of your routine. This is called habit stacking. You don't try to add speaking practice to your day as a separate, effortful, scheduled activity. You attach it to something you already do. You already make coffee every morning. While you make coffee, you narrate in English. You already commute to work or school. During the commute, you listen to an English podcast and shadow some of it. You already brush your teeth before bed. While you brush your teeth, you review the day in English, telling yourself the 3 most interesting things that happened. Each of these is a small, low-effort attachment, but added together, they become significant. 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Over the course of a day, over the course of a week, over the course of a year, these small habits compound into enormous progress. There is also something important about the psychology of small habits. When a habit is small enough to be easy, you rarely feel resistance to doing it. You almost never think, I don't want to do this today, because it is too small to feel burdensome. And because you almost never skip it, the habit becomes unbreakable. And because the habit becomes unbreakable, the progress becomes inevitable. Versus a large, ambitious habit. If you say, I will speak English for 2 hours every day, how many times do you think you will skip that? How many days will you feel too tired, too busy, too unmotivated? Many days. Most days, probably. And every time you skip it, you feel guilty. The guilt makes you feel bad about the whole project. And eventually, you abandon it. Start small. Stay consistent. Let the compound effect do the work. And then, as the habit becomes automatic, as it becomes part of your identity as someone who practices English every day, you can expand it gradually, naturally, without force. Chapter 17. The confidence that comes from doing I want to talk about confidence, because confidence is what most English learners are ultimately seeking. They want to feel confident when they speak. They want to feel sure of themselves. They want to not feel afraid. And many learners think that confidence must come before speaking, that they need to feel confident first, and then they will be ready to speak. But this is backwards. It is completely backwards. Confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. Let me say that again, because it is so important. Confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. You cannot think your way into confidence. You cannot study your way into confidence. You cannot watch enough YouTube videos to feel confident. Confidence is built from experience, from evidence, from the accumulation of moments where you tried to speak English and you survived, where you tried and made mistakes and kept going, where you tried and succeeded and felt the satisfaction of actually communicating. Every time you speak English, even badly, even with mistakes, even in a short exchange with a stranger, you add one small piece of evidence to the pile that says, I can do this. And over time, that pile grows, and the pile is your confidence. There is no other way to build it. And here is something beautiful about this process. The early moments of speaking, the rough ones, the stumbling ones, the embarrassing ones, they are not the price you pay for confidence. They are the confidence being built one awkward moment at a time. Every stumble is a brick. Every mistake is a brick. Every correction you received and applied is a brick. Every moment you felt afraid and spoke anyway is a brick. You are building a structure. And every speaking experience, good or bad, is material. So, I want you to stop waiting until you feel ready. I want you to stop waiting until you feel confident. I want you to stop waiting until your English is better, because your English only gets better when you speak it. The confidence you want is waiting for you on the other side of speaking, not before it. And here is something else I want you to know about confidence and fluency. Confidence makes your English sound better. This is not just a feeling, it is real. When you speak with confidence, you speak more fluidly. Your sentences flow more naturally. Your voice has more variety, more expression. You pause less. You hesitate less. You find words more quickly. And when you speak without confidence, the opposite happens. You hesitate more. Your sentences fragment. Your voice becomes flat. Your vocabulary shrinks to the safest, most basic words. You lose access to the richer English that you know. This means that building confidence is not just about feeling good. It is a practical tool for better speaking. Confident English is literally better English from a production standpoint. So anything that builds your confidence is also directly improving your speaking ability. And anything that undermines your confidence is also directly hurting your speaking ability. Protect your confidence, nurture it, treat it as one of your most valuable learning resources. Chapter 18. When English is emotional. There is one more dimension of this topic that I have not fully addressed yet, and I think it is one of the most important ones. Speaking a language is an emotional experience, not just a technical one. When you speak your native language, you speak with all of yourself. Your full personality comes through, your sense of humor, your nuances, your subtlety, your depth. You can say exactly what you feel in exactly the way you feel it. The words fit the emotions perfectly. When you speak a second language, especially when you are still developing it, there is a gap between who you are inside and who you can express in the new language. Your thoughts are complex. Your feelings are deep. Your personality is rich, but your language tools are limited. And so, what comes out of your mouth feels smaller than what is inside you. This is one of the most painful aspects of being a language learner that is rarely discussed openly. The sense of being diminished, of being less than yourself, of not being able to show who you really are. And this pain can be a very powerful source of discouragement. You think, I don't want to speak English, because when I do, I sound like a child. I sound simple. I sound like less than I am. And I would rather say nothing than let people think that this limited, stumbling version is really me. I want to address this directly and honestly. What you are experiencing is real. The gap between your inner richness and your outer expression in English is real, and it is painful, and you are not imagining it. But here is what I want you to know. This gap is temporary. It closes. Not completely, maybe. Some people always feel a slight difference between who they are in their native language and who they are in English. But the gap closes enormously as your English develops, as your vocabulary grows, as your fluency increases, as you find your voice in English. And the people who close that gap most completely are the ones who speak the most, who are most willing to be imperfect, to sound simple for a while, to let people see the incomplete version of themselves in English because they understand that the incomplete version is just a stage, not a destination. There is also something I want to say about the other side of this, about the new things that English opens up in your identity. Many multilingual speakers report something surprising. They say that their personality in English is different from their personality in their native language. Not completely different, but different in interesting ways. Sometimes freer, sometimes bolder, sometimes more direct, sometimes more humorous in different ways. A new language is not just a new way of saying the same things. It is a new way of being, a new set of tools for experiencing and expressing the world, a new voice. And that new voice, even if it starts small and stumbling, has the potential to say things that your native language voice never could, to reach people that no other part of you could reach, to build connections across cultures and countries and experiences. Your English voice is not a lesser version of you. It is another version of you, still growing, still finding itself, but real and valuable and full of potential. Chapter 19. The Long Game. I want to talk about time. Specifically, I want to talk about how long this actually takes. I want to be honest with you. Learning to speak English fluently takes time, real time, not weeks, not one course, not one summer of study, years of consistent practice. Most people don't like hearing this. They want a shortcut. They want the method that works in 30 days. And there are plenty of people selling that promise. But I am not going to sell it to you, because it is not true. And I think you deserve the truth. Fluency is a long game. And here is what I mean by fluency. I don't mean perfect English. I mean the ability to communicate your ideas clearly and reasonably naturally in most everyday situations. Not to sound like a native speaker, not to have zero accent, not to never make mistakes, just to communicate with real competency and confidence. That kind of fluency, for a person starting from a basic or intermediate level, typically requires somewhere between 500 and 1,000 hours of good practice. By good practice, I mean practice that includes significant speaking time. If you practice for 1 hour a day, that is between 1.5 and 3 years to reach functional fluency. If you practice for 30 minutes a day, it is between 3 and 5 years. These numbers might feel discouraging. But let me reframe them. You are going to live those years anyway. Whether you practice or not, 3 years will pass. 5 years will pass. The question is just whether at the end of those years, you can speak English or not. The people who feel most hopeless about their English are often the ones who spent the last 5 years thinking about speaking, but not doing the daily, consistent practice that produces fluency. And now 5 years have passed, and they don't feel significantly better, and they are frustrated. But you are listening to this right now. You are thinking about this right now. And if you start now, if you start the daily habit now, if you begin to speak now, imperfectly and consistently and bravely, then in 3 years, in 5 years, you will be in a completely different place. The same years will pass either way. The only question is what you build with them. And here is the thing about the long game. It gets easier. It genuinely gets easier. In the beginning, speaking is an enormous effort. Every sentence is a construction project. Every word is a decision. Every conversation is exhausting. But as you continue, as the automaticity builds, as the habit settles, as your confidence grows, the effort decreases. Words start coming faster. Sentences start forming more naturally. You start finding it possible to think about what you want to say, not just how to say it. And there are moments, glorious moments, that start appearing more and more often when you forget that you are speaking English, when you are just communicating, just thinking and expressing, just being a human being in a conversation, when the language becomes transparent, when it stops being the thing you are struggling with and becomes the medium through which you connect with the world. Those moments are what all the practice is for. Those moments are worth everything, and they come to everyone who stays on the path long enough. Chapter 20. A conversation with your future self. I want to end with something a little different, something more personal, something I hope will stay with you after this video ends. I want you to think about your future self, the person you will be in 3 years or 5 years, if you commit to this, if you practice consistently, if you face the fear and speak anyway, if you give yourself permission to be imperfect, if you trust the English that is already inside you. Who will that person be? Maybe they are in a job that was not possible before because their English opened a door. Maybe they are in a country they always wanted to live in. Maybe they have friends from different parts of the world, friends they could only meet because of their English. Maybe they are sharing ideas that matter, ideas that deserve to be heard beyond the borders of one language. Maybe they are the person in the room who can connect, who can translate, who can bridge. Maybe they are simply someone who no longer feels small when English is spoken, someone who no longer feels frozen, someone who no longer looks at other people speaking freely and feels that painful combination of envy and shame. That person is not far away. That person is built one speaking session at a time, one uncomfortable conversation at a time, one brave, imperfect, meaningful sentence at a time. Every day you practice, you are becoming them. Every word you say out loud in English, however rough, is a step toward them. And I want you to know something about that future self. They are not going to look back on the journey and wish they had waited longer. They are not going to wish they had studied more grammar before speaking. They are not going to wish they had been more careful, more perfect, more silent. They are going to be grateful for every messy attempt, every brave conversation, every moment you chose to speak when it would have been easier to stay silent. Because every one of those moments made them, made you. Chapter 21. The identity shift. There is one final layer of this that I want to unpack for you. One final thing that separates learners who eventually break through from learners who stay stuck indefinitely. It is identity. Specifically, it is the answer to this question: how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as someone who is trying to learn English? Or do you see yourself as someone who speaks English? These two identities sound similar, but they are completely different in the way they shape your behavior. Someone who is trying to learn English is always in preparation, always getting ready, always almost there, but not quite. Someone who is trying to learn is in a permanent state of becoming but never arriving. And because they have not arrived, they don't feel entitled to speak. They are waiting for the moment when they have learned enough, practiced enough, improved enough to deserve to call themselves an English speaker. That moment never comes, because learned enough has no clear finish line. There is always more to learn. There is always someone more fluent. There is always a situation you feel unprepared for. If you are waiting to fully learn English before you speak, you will wait forever. Someone who speaks English is different. Someone who speaks English uses the English they have, now, today, imperfectly, but actively. Someone who speaks English does not wait for permission. They do not wait for full preparation. They speak, and in speaking, they learn more, and in learning more, they speak better. This identity shift is subtle, but it is enormously powerful. It changes how you respond when someone asks if you speak English. Instead of, "I am learning English," or "I try to speak some English," or "My English is not very good," you say, "Yes, I speak English," and then you prove it by speaking. Imperfectly, honestly, but actively. It changes how you approach conversations. Instead of looking for a way out of an English conversation, you look for ways to stay in it, to extend it, to learn from it, because you are someone who speaks English, and English conversations are part of your life. It changes how you see your mistakes. Instead of mistakes being evidence that you are not yet an English speaker, they are just normal parts of being a human being who speaks English. Native speakers make mistakes. Fluent speakers make mistakes. Everyone who uses language makes mistakes. Mistakes are not proof of failure. They are proof of use. I want to tell you something about identity and language that linguists and psychologists have found fascinating. When people strongly identify with a language community, when they think of themselves as members of a group that uses that language, their language learning accelerates dramatically. They absorb vocabulary faster. They develop intuitions for grammar more quickly. They start to feel the language, not just understand it intellectually. This is because identity is deeply motivating. We unconsciously learn and adopt the behaviors of the groups we belong to or want to belong to. When you see yourself as an English speaker, not just an English learner, you start to pick up the habits, the posture, the confidence, the vocal patterns of people you see as fellow English speakers. And this accelerates your development in ways that pure study cannot. So I am asking you to make a decision today. A decision about identity. Not a dishonest decision, not a pretense. You are not going to pretend you are something you are not. You are not going to claim abilities you don't have. But you can decide right now that you are someone who speaks English. That your English, however imperfect, is real English. That you are not waiting to become an English speaker. You already are one. Say that to yourself, in English, right now, wherever you are. I am someone who speaks English. Notice how that feels. It might feel a little uncomfortable, a little false. That is normal. It feels false at first because your old identity has deep roots. It has years of evidence. Years of "I can't," and "I'm not ready," and "my English is not good enough." But repeat it. Say it daily, not just as an affirmation, but as a commitment. And then do the thing that makes it true. Speak every day, even a little, even badly. Speak, because identity and behavior reinforce each other. When you tell yourself you are an English speaker, you are more likely to speak. And when you speak, you create more evidence that you are an English speaker. And the identity becomes more real, more solid, more truly yours. There is also something I want to say about cultural identity and English, because I know this is something that many learners think about, even if they rarely say it aloud. Some learners feel that speaking English well means losing something of themselves, their native culture, their linguistic heritage, their sense of belonging to their own community. They feel that the more English they speak, the more distant they become from their roots. This fear is understandable, and for some people in some historical contexts, language and cultural identity have been genuinely and painfully tangled. Language has been used as a tool of colonialism, of cultural erasure, of forced assimilation. Those histories are real, and they matter. But I want to offer a different way of thinking about this for those of you who feel it. Adding English to your identity does not require subtracting your native language or culture. It does not require becoming less of who you already are. The most powerful multilingual speakers in the world are not people who erased their native identities to become English speakers. They are people who carry multiple identities, multiple languages, multiple ways of being in the world. They move between worlds. They connect worlds. They are larger, not smaller, because of each language they have. You can be deeply, proudly yourself in your native language, and you can also be a confident, capable English speaker. These are not in competition. They are in addition. English is not a replacement. It is an expansion. And that expansion is yours for the claiming. Starting today, we have come a long way in this lesson. A long, important way. We talked about the gap, the distance between understanding and speaking. We talked about why it exists. We talked about recognition automaticity versus production automaticity. We talked about the overloaded working memory. We talked about trust, the deep, powerful trust problem, the inner critic, the years of education that taught you to fear mistakes, the impossibly high standard that years of input created. We talked about passive English, why input is necessary but not sufficient, why consuming English trains the wrong muscle. We talked about fear, the social fear, the physiological response, the freeze, the blank. We talked about what makes some people speak easily, communication over correctness, experience with imperfection, releasing the comparison to native speakers, having a reason bigger than the fear. We talked about the silence loop and how to break it. We talked about the mind going blank and how to handle it. We talked about the English you already have, the library already full, the door already open. We talked about methods, talking to yourself, shadowing, the 300-sentence challenge, storytelling, speaking partners, those ... We talked about correction, vocabulary, listening, accent, habit building, confidence, emotion, and time. And we talked about identity, the shift from someone trying to learn English to someone who speaks English. The moment you stop waiting for permission and start showing up. And underneath all of it, one idea. The same idea, seen from different angles, repeated in different ways throughout this entire lesson. The gap closes when you speak. Not when you study more. Not when you wait until you feel ready. Not when your vocabulary is bigger. Not when your grammar is perfect. Not when your confidence is high. When you speak. Before all of that. Imperfectly. Bravely. Now. You already have the English. You just have to trust it. Let me leave you with this. Think about every single time in your life that you have understood something in English. Every song you sang along to, even if you didn't know all the words perfectly. Every movie scene that made you laugh or cry or think. Every sentence you read on a screen somewhere in the world that suddenly made something clear. Every conversation where you listened and understood every word. All of that understanding did not happen by accident. You built it. You put in the time. You absorbed it. You earned it. And all of that English, every word you understand, every phrase that is familiar, every grammar pattern you recognize instantly, it is yours. It lives inside you. It is not borrowed. It is not temporary. It is part of your mind now. And it is waiting. It is waiting for you to stop holding it back. Waiting for you to open your mouth and let it out. Waiting for you to discover that the version of you that speaks English is not weaker or smaller or less impressive than the version of you that only understands it. The speaking version of you is the full version, the complete version, the version that can do everything the understanding version can do and more. That version of you is closer than you think. One conversation away, one recording away, one brave sentence away. Now, I have one request. Go to the comments below and tell me, what is the real difference between understanding English and speaking it? What did you discover today? What shifted? I read every comment. I want to hear from you. And if this lesson helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There are millions of people out there with exactly this problem, full of English that they are afraid to use. Maybe someone you know is one of them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end. You are here because you want to grow, and that matters more than you know. This is the Speaking Reset, and the reset starts now. Keep going, keep speaking, keep trusting the English inside you. I will see you in the next lesson.